G'day viewers, how are you? Made it through another week, congratulations. Welcome to a weekend edition of TFU. Yes, I was a bit slack and didn't get this up on Friday night. Cocktail hour. Might have had an influence on that. Who knows? And as usual with most weeks, there is an enormous number of stories I could have chosen to talk about because there are so many totally fucked up things happening in the world. But I'm actually going to focus on one story. And it does have connections and tie-ins to some of the significant stories during the week. And it's a pretty fucked story, and it actually makes me quite genuinely angry. And that's why I want to focus on it. Now, if you've been paying attention to the big stuff, almost everything has been swamped by impeachment investigations starting against Trump and everything under the sun going wrong for Boris Johnson in the UK. And if you saw anything beyond those, it was probably about the UN climate talks with Greta Thunberg and other young climate activists presenting there, and watching the truly bizarre way in that particularly older men lose their fucking shit about Greta Thunberg. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. But there's a related thing, because in New York at the time was Australian Prime Minister Scummo, and he went and made a ridiculous fucking speech that said, we reject the idea that Australia's not doing its bit for climate change. Absolutely, and went on to say some dumb shit about it's not rising temperatures that's the problem, it's rubbish in the ocean. Well, rubbish in the ocean is a problem, but it's not quite as cataclysmic as what we're facing with climate change. And I did particularly like the Climate Council of Australia specifically calling Morrison out on absolute bullshit. But that's not even what I'm talking about. It's just that Scummo was in New York and he was sucking up hard to Trump, which Trump, of course, loved. And that was all what was the main focus of the news, but slightly under the radar. It was reported, but I'd forgive you for having missed it. Slightly under the radar was the report that Scummo, who is a lunatic evangelical happy clapper who belongs, or used to belong, to the biggest and in fact really only megachurch in Australia, Hillsong, there was a report that he tried to get his spiritual advisor, the head of Hillsong, invited to the White House for an official event along with him, and the White House staffers ruled this out. Now, this is one of those things where it is actually quite difficult to pin down whether that's true or not, because it's like anonymous insider reports said it happened, and there was never an official statement, and Scummo denied that this happened, and I think Trump might have officially denied it happened, but they're both pathological fucking liars. And you think, well, you know, Trump sucks up to the evangelicals in the US, Scummo's an evangelical who's sucking up to Trump. Why would Scummo's evangelical advisor be barred from the White House? Well, you see, he's under investigation because his dad, the founder of Hillsong, was a child sex abuser. This is not an allegation. This is not a rumour. This is a fact. He sexually abused children in the congregation. And when this was reported that to the son, who was at this point running Hillsong, he did not immediately report this to the police. He took it upon himself to investigate, which delayed police investigation into the matter because they didn't know about it. Now, where this all ties in is that Hillsong has been sending threatening letters to Australian media saying, you better not say our guy covered up child sex abuse, because that's not true, and we'll fucking sue you. And see, getting sued for defamation in Australia is quite dangerous because the defamation laws lean very heavily in favour of the person making the complaint. But see, here's where it's interesting, because in the letter sent to media outlets, which the media outlets gleefully gave to the public, one of the key things they said is, hey, no, you said the Royal Commission said he covered things up. And they never said that. When the Royal Commission by the way, the Royal Commission I'm talking about was the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse in institutions. The one who copped the most flack from it was the Catholic Church, but the investigation was not limited to the Catholic Church, and Hillsong was also investigated. This is where we find out that the founder was a child sex abuser, and his son, who at this point had risen to being in charge of Hillsong, when he learned of the allegations against his father, did not notify the police immediately. Decided he was the right person to investigate them. Now, through this letter, Hillsong has said, don't say he covered it up, we'll sue you. And they said, see, the Royal Commission didn't say he covered up. Well, the Royal Commission did say he specifically did not report these matters to the police when he became aware of them. He decided he should investigate, and the Royal Commission stated the bleeding obvious and said there was a terrible conflict of interest in him investigating A, his own father, B, his own church. One would think anyone with common sense would go, that isn't the right way to go. And yes, police were informed, and his father was found out to be a child sex abuser. At this point, there is no allegation that I'm aware of that the son is also a child sexual abuser. There's just concern about he was not particularly prompt in reporting it to the police. And he is, in fact, currently under investigation by New South Wales Police. They are investigating whether or not his conduct amounts to criminal wrongdoing. So rushing out the gate saying, hey, don't you say he covered things up. I don't know. You might be going for a bit of Streisand effect right there. But of course, the big thing is you're getting heavily into semantics. And I don't know if any of the media outlets actually use the phrase saying he covered it up. But what we know is factually true is when he was made aware of what had happened, he did not immediately report it to police. So then we're stuck in a semantic quagmire. Is not getting the police involved in one of the most serious criminal offences around. You know, it's kind of like murder and then someone in a position of power sexually assaulting children is just under that. The fact that you think you don't need to immediately report this to police, and what the Royal Commission showed us is there was systemic cover-ups of sexual abuse in a whole range of institutions, including Hillsong Church, as I said, most notoriously in the Catholic Church. But to actually be sending out these letters saying, we're going to sue you if you say he covered things up, seems like you're going to hinge the entire thing on a semantic argument. Is not actually immediately going to the police an attempt at a cover-up? Could someone make a reasonable case to say you only went public when it was impossible to keep it suppressed? I don't know the details of the case. I don't know if they're seriously going to launch legal proceedings against any media outlets, or if this is just an attempt to stifle reporting because of how strict Australia's libel and slander laws are. That remains to be seen. But this shit makes me super angry, and also pretty fucking horrified for the state of this country. The specifics make me very angry. An institution where it has been established the founder of this institution was sexually abusing children that were supposed to be under his care, and then the person who was running the institution, when he discovered this, did not immediately report it to the police, but decided he should investigate it, which, as I said, was censured in the Royal Commission as a gross conflict of interest, and he is currently under investigation by the New South Wales Police to see if there was actually any criminal wrongdoing involved in this. It's just like, when everything has gone so wrong, it's like with the Archbishop George Pell, convicted child rapist, still his conservative political and media defenders will not shut the fuck up. What is wrong with a person who decides, oh no, the hill I'm going to die on is defending a child rapist? And yeah, just that's a bit of a side issue, but to bring that one up in the same week that the conservative media came up with their new talking point that pushing Greta Thunberg front and centre is child abuse, the same people were still actively defending convicted child rapist George Pell. I mean, it's pretty obvious, to me at least, what would drive someone to do that. I mean, obviously that's opinion rather than fact, but when you say just allowing a kid to express at their outrage at their future potentially being destroyed, if you call that child abuse, but when you see a child rapist being convicted and you're all over, this is a miscarriage of justice, I think I get a pretty clear idea that your main concern is the protection of power and institutions, not the protection of children. Child abuse is not actually something that actually genuinely drives you. Protecting established power structures seems to be your thing, quite honestly. So yeah, we've got this evangelical church with shit record saying they're going to sue media outlets if you dare to suggest our guy covered up the sexual abuse of his own father. And the deeply creepy bit, our deranged Prime Minister has this guy as his spiritual advisor. And if that doesn't chill you to the fucking bone, there is something wrong with you. We currently have a Prime Minister who is so detached from reality. He genuinely and wholly believes he was handed his position by a divine power, and the person who keeps convincing him this is correct is the head of an evangelical church, the founder of which was a sexual abuser of children, and the guy currently running it, the guy currently being spiritual advisor to the Prime Minister of Australia, is under police investigation for how he handled the reporting of his own father's sexual abuse of children.